But
Let's see.
Uh-oh. Fumble.
What? Everybody knows.
so yeah, I mean the bottom line is that something that we haven't really we talked about a bunch at the beginning, but we haven't really mentioned it in a long time. Was that Revelations is about answers.
Yeah.
It's a very aptly titled game, um, and whether that be from the perspective of the Templars and Abstergo in the modern day, or whether it's even from Desmond and getting to know more about his past and who he is and what he's going through, um, and and all of that sort of thing. Certainly, it's Ezio's game, but we're going to learn more about Altair as well,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of we have a lot of strings to tie up.
Yes, definitely. I mean, wow. Just, again, for those listening, if you haven't played Brotherhood, you probably should, because not only is the ending, wow, yeah, we're just, it's as Aima would
You
say,
have to
a mind fuck.
experience
You
it.
just we need to
It's an Olympic grade mindfuck.
fuck,
I
yeah.
think is what he says. I think,
You
and
have to
that's a
say it
quote, so it's
on
okay.
behalf
Is
of
that a
Weimar.
technical term?
That's it. Yeah.
It sets everything up nicely, because it's not just a cliffhanger and they're like, oh, what's gonna happen to this guy? There's so many things involved and so many,
hmm
threads being left open and that need to be, raveled up and stuff. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think Brotherhood bullet points those topics and those issues that we're still waiting for answers on quite well. And so Revelations is exactly what we're going to be getting. It's sort of a resolution to a lot of the things we've been wondering about.
Awesome. All right. Let's look at, while we're still on the topic of multiplayer. Let's look at you guys released some information not too long ago, which is, let's call it sort of like the final multiplayer information before the game comes out. I know Luma's been poring over this because I'm sure you have some questions.
I have a list. I have a
But
Google Doc.
I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with the question I have. Is, I noticed you've mentioned the modes that are gonna be that are gonna be in Revelation. Some returning, like Wanted, Manhunt, Escort, Assassinate, Chest Capture. Then you have the likes of the new ones: Deathmatch, Artifact Assault, Corruption, which I'm really looking forward to playing,
hmm
and Steal the Artifact,
Mhm.
which isn't exactly the same as Artifact Assault. Um, and I want to ask, with the reverse detection meter that we've touched upon, quite a lot in previous
I love how that's
podcasts.
become the official name for the meter now.
Yes.
It's
We'll tell you
that's
what
the
it's called.
official title. That's it. That's not what that meter's called, but it is now. I think
Hell
we
yeah.
I like it.
The power of community.
We've changed the name.
Yeah.
Now you know who's really in charge here.
So you guys gonna put us in the credits, yeah?
We're watching for it. We're like, where's our name?
But the one question I've seen, tons of different uh, community forums, the official ones and unofficial ones dotted around the internet, on Steam, on Twitter, on Facebook, is with the reverse detection meter, assuming you guys haven't tweaked that and changed it in any way and that it's returning, how is Assassinate going to work with that? Because it just, yeah. I mean, the whole concept of it's not the same as, the other modes, especially Wanted, where I don't know, the reverse detection meter isn't going to work with Assassinate, or is it? I personally don't understand how that's going to work. Can you
Because you have to lock a character
In
before you
Assassinate, yeah.
can attack them, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Mhm.
So how is the reverse detection meter going to work with that? Maybe you have to keep them locked a little bit longer. Maybe you have to lock them and stock them.
And go for
Do
the
you support
focus.
the current
Maybe I
method
can
of locking
actually
at the last
play
second?
Assassinate now.
Incognitos after. How did Squiddish put it? Squiddish put it perfectly, where it was like, barrel through like a market stall through like two crowds, like somersaulting over them, and then like incognito.
Yeah.
Like, is that the way it should be? I don't know. Seems.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, I think actually from a gameplay perspective, just from what I know of the Annecy studio, they would say no, that's not what it should be like at all. because because the gameplay loop is supposed to include stalking, like, and that's where the reverse detection meter really came from, was this desire to say, like, okay, well, from now on, it's not good enough for you just to like to be quiet on your way up. You actually have to spend some time after you locate your target to try and like, plan out the best way to attack them if you want that incognito bonus. And while you're at it, you might as well try and get the focus bonus as well if you aren't going to get stunned. Um, which I think it's funny because people complain, but like all these mechanics work against each other for a reason, right? Like it's an opportunity cost that you have to kind of measure for yourself, right? And you have to gauge against the player as to how experienced they are, whether or not they're going to recognize the whispers. Um, like if they're me, for example, and cannot hear the whispers to save their lives, you could probably go for the focus on me, but yeah, so how is that going to work? I have to be honest, I'm not entirely positive how it is in the final build, and I couldn't actually say that if it is turning out that it's not working, that we wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
I mean, the end result is that we want people to have a good time, and we want people to play the game. And if we, are finding that people are not enjoying themselves, then that's something that we need to take a hard look at. Um, but but yeah, so as far as how it is actually going to work in the final game, I couldn't say, but I would not put it past Annecy for 1 second to make it work exactly as
How they want it to work.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
that
fine.
yes, that's how assassinate works. You lock your target, and then you have to spend some time like hiding in a blend group, or maybe you want to choose your target that way so that you are already in a blend group and you're totally like incognito already, so that when you lock them, it doesn't take that meter so long to it doesn't take the gauge that long to rise. Like, is that compatible with an
Well,
aggressive playstyle?
okay, so that's
Maybe
the
not.
thing, mainly because like if you have to lock to get the contract, so up until that point, you're not draining or building the bar up in any way, unless you have a passive bar.
Right.
That is when you come into line of sight of any target, you start to build it up, and then when you lock them, you get the go ahead. And then if you perform a high profile action, like in Brotherhood, how it was you didn't have an approach meter up until when you lock the person. Then you could either build it, drain it basically because you'd start at incognito, wouldn't you? That's why people locked at the last possible second, so
Yeah.
that they didn't have you know, they didn't run the risk of losing
I kept
things.
getting killed by that.
Yeah, I mean the lock system
Yeah.
itself in Brotherhood wasn't the greatest, so that's where
Yeah.
people could manipulate that. If they were good at locking, they'd win that battle,
Mhm.
even if you saw them first and thought you locked them first. But in this case, the moment you lock somebody, I assume with the reverse detection meter, you're gonna start at discreet. So it's obviously gonna be a change of playstyles, but up onto the point where you lock somebody, you're not draining or building up that bar. So stalking before you lock the person, I don't know, just seems a bit redundant to me.
Yeah, no. There's not really any point to stock them before then.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that if you are going to be, um, you might want to start in a group
Okay.
just so that when you lock them, you're prepared.
Yeah.
Um, because otherwise, and that's a thing to kind of try and remember about assassinate as well is if nobody's going to kill you if they don't know that you're unless they know that you're a player character,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's one of the things that we really wanted to stress in the game again, right? Like, because there's an aggressive playstyle that doesn't pay any attention to whether or not someone can tell whether you're a player character or a non-player character.
Yeah.
And that's something that we wanted to kind of bring back was that uncertainty,
Mhm.
so that it makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
All right. I guess it's something that it's definitely gonna, there's gonna be a switch up of play, especially in Assassinate. I know I personally wasn't a big fan of it, but mainly because of lag latency factors that played a heavy role, and obviously the lock system, which ties into all of that. But it was definitely popular, especially amongst the quite highly competitive members of the community. So
That's where all the points were.
yeah, they would score big points. It'd be interesting to see how playstyles and points change. And on the subject of points, obviously, during the beta, things were tweaked with regards to grounded bonus and stuff like that. I know you guys obviously won't give too much away, but has that stayed sort of like the same with the changes that you made in the beta, or we're gonna see completely new sort of like score system with those things?
I don't believe you're going to see any insanely drastic changes because there's still a large market that we're going to have to pedal the game to and sort of get their feedback on it.
Okay.
But we definitely did get like an avalanche of feedback
Yeah.
straight from the beta, and there are some things that are going to be addressed based on that feedback.
All right.
But there were also certain things that were just like, well, as Gabe said, it's like there's a reason why a lot of these systems work together, and there's definitely a play style that the developers had in mind when they were creating how these mechanics work and how they sort of, Lego together, if you will.
Yeah.
The game's playable in many different ways, but there is certain things to the Assassin's Creed pillars of play style that we do try to support.
Okay.
So, drastic changes, like are things going to be completely different from the beta when the game releases? I doubt it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you're not going to see any difference for the people that play the beta. And there is going to be some modifications to be made once we get some feedback from the mass audience.
Okay. Sweet. Luma, did you have any questions that you wanted to put to?
Yeah, sure. I guess one of the things I was wondering about was, in Brotherhood you had these optional Animus DLC, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 packs, which were optional and ended up fragmenting the player base a lot. And even now, especially with Brotherhood winding down, it can be really hard to find matches in certain modes. And it also, you'd see people doing things like turning off DLC so that they could go up against like the newbier people who were like renting the game or hadn't downloaded any DLC yet, stuff like that. And I'm worried that with so many game modes that you've kept like all the ones from Brotherhood except for Alliance, which is kind of sad in my opinion. But and then you're adding in like 3 or 4 other ones as well. And so I'm wondering if you guys are going to, obviously you're going to release DLC at some point down the line with probably more maps and characters and stuff. Are you doing anything to address the fragmentation in the player base so that, you don't have people switching DLCs and everything and then everyone can just all play together and find matches really quickly?
That is a very good question.
Yeah.
Because it was very clear to us with the DLC that we released, which was funny because it was optional and it was free. The number of people that didn't end up picking it up were kind of like, I mean, we had like we had pretty high rates when we had people pick it up, but it's just like those few people that didn't. It's just like what is free? Like, just get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was definitely something that we recognized, and it's something that we would plan to address in Revelations were there DLC to announce at this time.
Okay.
You're good. You're good.
Good
You've been
PR
doing this
answer
a long
there.
time.
Otherwise, mad at me.
Yeah.
Can't get anything past him. All right.
Yeah.
Try to word play something out.
Yeah. Have you got any other questions, Luma?
How many do I get?
As many as you want. That's.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go through a couple that I had. Let's see. So, one other thing okay, this might get a little too technical. That's maybe some people don't really care about this, but you also had a situation in Brotherhood, where you're counting these. You release all these night maps, right? And you're counting them as separate maps. And I thought it was really funny when you guys released like the trailer. Actually, I don't think it was the US trailer, but one of the trailers for Revelations, and it was like 17 maps or whatever. And then I forget who it was. It might have been Squiddish. Was like, oh, so does that mean like 9 maps and then like eight like night maps, night versions or whatever? I was just kind of like, and then like the list came out, and I was like, oh crap, that is like what it actually is. And how it would work in Brotherhood was since you counted them separately, you would run into these really crappy situations. So it kind of so happened that, a lot of people like Sienna and Castell as their favorite maps, but they did not have night versions. And since they don't have night versions, all the other maps would come up more often in the cycle. And sometimes you would get these cycles. There was one day where I had a cycle of Pienza night, straight into Pienza, to Pienza night, to Alhambra night. And I was just like, or like it was just like ridiculous. Like I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, yeah, like and so I'm looking at this list and I'm like, all right, I'm looking at this list and I'm pretty sure Castell's the one that's getting screwed out of a night version again. And it's probably, although you can vote now it's kind of like this weird voting system, at least in the beta, where it was like you can either rematch the exact same thing you did, or you can rematch in the same mode on a different map, or you could choose like a totally different mode that's kind of like in the same genre of like free for all or team modes. And I was just wondering if you guys could like kind of stop considering the night maps separate, like when you're counting them and in the game, and like I don't know, it's just kind of like
I'm kind
I
of
think
all for this as well. Just to
yeah, I think a lot of the community is kind of exasperated with counting night maps as separate maps, like in many ways, you know. And so I don't want Castell to get screwed out of the map cycle again, even when you're voting on it, just like coming through it and just stuff like that. I don't know. It's just kind of a
Yeah.
random like Twitch
Well,
type.
No, that's a very valid point. And that's good feedback, to have.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
honestly, like from the feedback that we've received before, that's why we added in the voting system, because we knew that people didn't feel like they had enough choice as to what they were going to do next or
Yeah.
whatever, and we want to make sure that people are choosing the thing that they want to do the most. Now, if that is not enough, then that is something that we'll have to look at.
I think the voting
And
helps
it
a
sounds
lot.
it sounds like it might. I mean, counting the night maps as separate maps, it's kind of something that we have to do, because otherwise, we don't. There's no other way to categorize those maps, right? Like, I'm not sure how we would.
Well, I thought you would just select like, oh, we're gonna pick from either San Donato, like Siena, and Venice, and then if you choose San Donato, then like the game like flips a coin and it says either day or night. Or when you're voting, like when you go over to San Donato, there's another like vertical drop-down menu where you say either like day or night or something like that,
Uh-huh.
and then like you can
because
add up all the San Donato votes, and then out of that, if San Donato wins, then you pick the most popular variant of it or whatever. Or I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just this is the programmer in me just kind of like thinking of trying to like like make this work in a way that kind of makes more sense, because I don't want to like play something like Knight's Hospital, which I'm not really a fan of, and then it's like the rematch. I mean, you get up to the voting screen at the end and it's like rematch Knight's Hospital, or you can play Wanted on Knight's Hospital Night. Other option, deathmatch Knight's Hospital, or something like, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, it shouldn't it shouldn't
stuff
it
like
shouldn't
that.
be like that. It shouldn't like
Okay.
the voting system should not you will always have the option of moving to a different map or a different mode.